Today we're at the Grovehill Memorial Park Cemetery here in Dallas, Texas, and today I'm going to show you the final resting place of Paul Alexander. He was one of the last few people in the entire world that lived their life in an iron lung. Paul Alexander was born on January 30th, 1946 here in Dallas, Texas. And just like a lot of little boys his age, his first 6 years of life here on this planet, I guess you would say, was quite uneventful until one afternoon while playing in the backyard of his family's home. Paul starts to feel just doesn't feel good all of a sudden. It kind of came over him all of a sudden. He's not feeling too hot, so he runs into his home and he tells his mom, "I don't feel good." He's sweating. He's having a hard time breathing. And so his mother, checks his forehead. She notices that it's a little bit hot. And so they decide to take him to the hospital. And at this point now, he's having a difficult time breathing. And while they were possibly in either a waiting room or the hallway or something, one of the nurses or the doctors notices that Paul kind of like passes out. And they immediately think, okay, this kid could, possibly have polio. And many of us truly don't know anything about that dreaded disease. But polio was, I don't want to say it was guaranteed death, but it was something that you wanted no part of. A very debilitating disease that practically nowadays has been eradicated. But Paul wakes up not knowing where he's at. He's in some kind of weird, strange contraption, and he can't see anything. It's very hot. He's sweating like crazy, and he can't move. Maybe for a brief moment, maybe Paul thought, am I dead? And then now he starts thinking, am I in hell? It's hot as all get out. And the reason why it was hot was because when Paul woke up, little did he know was that he did contract polio and he was in an iron lung. And because there was so much mucus in his chest and his diaphragm was paralyzed, that they needed to create kind of like a steamy or moist environment to loosen up the phlegm in his lungs. So eventually they take off this kind of plastic bubble that was encased over the top part of the iron lung. The iron lung is a contraption. It almost looks like it's something out of almost a medieval torture chamber. The best way I can tell people kind of like myself that don't really have a brain to understand mechanics, I like things simplified. I don't know about you guys, but just think of the iron lung as an accordion. I could be wrong in using that analogy, but that's how I understand it myself. Just imagine the accordion, and when the accordion comes back, it's creating negative pressure in that chamber, which allows his paralyzed diaphragm to contract, thus being able to allow him to breathe. And those iron lungs, just a fabulous invention. Nowadays we don't have iron lungs anymore. Now it would be pretty much a ventilator, and I think there's other styles of iron lungs, but back in those days, that's all we knew. That was the technology that was available to us, was these big, huge 600-pound machines. So for the next 18 months, Paul would be just stuck in this contraption. So he's in a hospital ward, and there is multiple iron lungs in the same room where he's at. And in these iron lungs are other children similar to his age, some older, some younger. And you're in this contraption, you can't leave. Everything has to be done for you. Using the bathroom is done for you. Eating, you're fed, that's done for you. You cannot move, you can't go anywhere. Okay, maybe they have a TV up on, near the ceiling where you can watch, your favorite cowboy and Indian TV show, but can you imagine the torture of being a child and not being able to move, not being able to scratch your leg if a fly somehow gets on your leg? And you're wondering what the hell is going on. Now you make best with your situation and what's going on. And over the course of the 18 months that Paul is in this contraption in the hospital, you would make friends with the other kids that are in the same room. And as the months go by, he would notice that a particular person that he got along with very well would be gone. Like, they're taking out Rita. Well, where's Rita? Where are you taking her away? And then Sam is gone. I like Sam. We made jokes together, funny faces. He didn't know this, but those kids were dying around him. And later on, he would be practically the only one left. And can you imagine being 6, 7 years old? And then happy birthday to, they're singing happy birthday, and you're in this damn iron prison. And you're wondering, when the hell am I gonna get out? Like, why can't I move my legs? You hear the doctors as they walk by, and they think that, people, when they talk, they think that you can't hear them. They think that, your ears aren't working. And they would say, man, can you believe that kid is still alive? God, when is he gonna die already? Can you imagine? They're wishing you death. Not necessarily saying they're wishing you death, but they're just kind of like, wow, everyone's dying around except this kid. When is he gonna finally check out? And then this little 7-year-old boy is listening to these people talk about him finally dying. But Paul, he would beat the odds. He wouldn't be that little boy that would just keel over and die. So finally he gets out of the hospital, and they transport the iron lung via a truck and a portable generator back to his home, and that's where he would be. Now, later on, Paul would be able to, quote unquote, escape the iron lung for periods of time. Now, at this moment, he's paralyzed from the neck down. He can't move. He can't anything. Right? Everything needs to be done for himself. And when, most people in that condition, their time on earth is not going to be very long. So the, breathing therapist, respiratory therapist, they wanted Paul to be able to get out of the iron lung and just kind of be able to somewhat breathe on his own. So they would do these breathing exercises where basically, Paul would call it frog breathing. The medical terminology is glossopharyngeal breathing, which is basically, he said it was like, you take the air, because mind you guys, your diaphragm is pretty much paralyzed. That's what's contracting in your body to allow inhalation and exhalation of breathing. So he would basically have to use his tongue to suck air down into his throat to breathe. And it would take him many years to be able to perfect this form of breathing, but that's how he would be able to escape his iron lung for, hours at a time and be able to live as much as a normal life as you can possibly live. So instead of Paul feeling sorry for himself and saying like, I'm in this thing, my life is over with. No, he took that as an opportunity, almost as a challenge to better himself and to say, you know what? I want to do something with my life. And this is past the iron lung. Me personally, this is when I really, really just, it's more than the word props to him. This is what makes him obviously physically different than anybody else, but this is when I find it endearing that somebody in his position would want to do anything when he could just easily just sit back and kind of wait to die. So after him graduating Dallas High School, he went to SMU for a while, and while he was there, he figured out, he's like, you know what, I want to be a lawyer. A lawyer? How are you going to be a lawyer, right? Yeah, that's right. He wants to be a lawyer. So he applies to the University of Texas at Austin. He wants to go to law school. And at first they were saying no. Like, no, you can't come here because you're very disabled. And they just said no. And it took a couple, I want to say years, for him to finally convince them to admit him. That wouldn't have happened nowadays, but back then was back then. So finally, whoever was in charge of admittance to that school basically told them, they said, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We'll give you admittance in on the account of two things that you must do. Number one, you have to get the polio vaccine. Sure, whatever. And two, you have to find a frat house to be either your caretaker or watch over you. I'm not exactly sure what that word is, but basically you got to find a frat house that's gonna be your watcher or whatever. And he did both things, and that's when he would start attending classes to be a lawyer. Now, he didn't, at the time that I know of, have a caregiver per se, but basically everybody on the campus would kind of pitch in to help him to wheel him from class to class. Now at this time now, he didn't go to class in an iron lung. No, he's able, in the daytime to, he would be like in an upright position and especially made wheelchair. And then he would go to his class. He would do everything. Write his assignments or type his assignments out with a plastic stick with a clicker for a typewriter, hunt and peck. Or he had somebody to dictate what he would want them to say, and that's how he got his work done. And he would later go on to graduate, and he became a Dallas-based attorney. His specialty was family law and bankruptcy. Can you imagine when people they're going to him? They call, I'm going through a divorce with my wife and I need a lawyer. And then they come into his office and they see him in this iron lung, or they see him in that upright chair. And they're like, what the, you got to imagine some of them would be like, I don't want to use the word put off, but surprised. But I want to say he was a lawyer, maybe about 30 years. And absolutely quite amazing. And to spend the better part of 70 years in an iron lung must be torturous, right? We can all pretend to put ourselves in the position of Paul. And, as he got older, he would have to spend more time in the iron lung because his muscles, as we age, they get weaker. And, people would often say, like, it's 2020. Why is he still in an iron lung, right? Because it's an outdated technology, and, now we have other means of helping people that can't breathe, right? All kinds of contraptions. Now, the articles get a little dicey with a lot of stories. They say slightly different things, but I can't say this. Paul did not want any tubes down his throat. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to wear any like cannula, the prongs with the oxygen that goes in your nose. He didn't want to do any of that. And I think these words that he said in an interview pretty much give us the answer as to why he chose to stay in this iron lung. The iron lung is my cage, but also my cocoon. I think if I would have just said those words instead of kind of going on and on, I think I wouldn't have needed to say the other words, but the iron lung kept him alive. And I think as physically as it's important to keep him alive, also mentally. And I think that as humans, we, no matter our situation, humans are very adaptable to their environment. And as he was adaptable to his environment. And just, you know, we've all seen his interviews, we've all seen like stories about him, but can you imagine, but for only a moment, all of the stages of psychological trauma that he went through in all of his years? Anxiety, depression, angst, sadness, anger, despair, loneliness. Maybe he would think about it as he was younger, and as time went on, maybe they dissipated, but maybe they were still a part of him. I don't know. But this is the final resting place of Paul Alexander. I think that is so awesome. It has him in a little iron lung right there. That is awesome. And he's buried alongside his wife, Mary Catherine, world's greatest caregiver. And this woman was responsible for basically taking care of him. And when she died, can you imagine? You know, when a husband and wife, when one dies, the other soon goes. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised, just looking at the dates, I'm surprised that he lasted a year and a half without his wife. Because if you would have told me this story, I would have said he would have been dead within 3 months. But just a man that wasn't gonna let this dreaded disease be the end of him. And, you know, sadly, you know, it had to take his death for him to escape his, you know, his cage, his cocoon. But he finally did, and I hope that nobody would have to go through that kind of mental and physical torture. Because it's easy when a camera's in your face to put on a smile. And, you know, listen, Paul, he would almost come across as, you know, like, yeah, his spirit was very high, you know, while he was being interviewed. But, you know, when that camera's off and those people leave your apartment and you're by yourself with your wife, or your wife goes to sleep and you're by yourself and you wake up, I mean, what must you be thinking? But obviously he lived as many years as he did because he had a fight in him to want to live. And his iron lung, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do with it, but he did say that he wanted his iron lung to be kept in some museum. So we'll definitely do a separate video for that on another channel in the future. We'll go check out his iron lung. I'm sure it'll be here in Dallas. So rest in peace to both Mary Catherine and Paul Richard Alexander. Rest in peace. Love your lives, guys. Love your lives. Tomorrow is promised to no man. And while we're here, let's just enjoy it while we can. Live, but not live. But I'm still alive by the grace of God. Lamont at large. We're jumping on the highway. We're going to be heading east in about a few days. Maybe we'll be going to Tennessee. Here's the future's adventures ahead. Peace out.